Hey, welcome to The Medicine with Girds and Te'o. Benny, we're back for another week.
I know we're going to get into some listener questions. I think we want to talk about interchange.
Yeah, Big Tino's in there. He's made a move. Your mate Sammy Burgess off to England.
Yeah, he's off to Warrington. Papua New Guinea, my trip to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. And I did a sweat lodge last week. Let's have a chat about that.
Intense.
Of course, boys, the Matildas.
Mate, the Matildas.
The Matildas.
How good are the Matildas going?
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Lucky you're here, mate. I tell you. Cleaning up after us again.
Last time I saw you, I was off to the airport to go to Papua New Guinea, and you were off to a sweat lodge.
Did you miss me?
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been a while.
So who wants to go first?
I don't care, mate. Do you want, me,
I reckon,
you want me to go first?
I'm more
Sweat
interested.
lodging?
I'm more interested in the sweat lodge.
Yeah, it was interesting. So firstly, the whole, like, I've never seen one before, so the whole way that they set it up is pretty impressive, like with just local sort of reeds just sort of bent over a pit where they just put stones in, and so then they put all like skins over the top of the structure. So as I said, like I was pretty nervous, right, because I don't necessarily like small spaces, and I heard that it's black once you get in there, and you just kind of all you can see is the glow of the stone, and I knew there was like going to be 30 people there.
30 people.
There's 30 people, and the structure would probably be about as big as this room.
What?
Yeah, and there's no and you actually sit on the earth. That's part of it. So it was beautiful.
So you guys are just bunched up like side by side.
Side by side,
what are you
like
wearing?
I just had boardies on.
Yeah.
The feminine, they need to cover their kind of shoulders and knees traditionally.
Yeah.
But the guys can just wear it going in shorts.
Yeah.
But whenever you're going to do something like that, ceremony is really important, and like learning a little bit about it just makes the experience just a little bit more authentic and real. And so, I really enjoyed, like, there was a fair bit of prayer on that around a circle before we went in. This guy that puts on the ceremony, he's like done things like the sun dance, which is like I think it's like an 8-day process that they do in certain parts of the world where they sweat lodge for 4 days, and then they don't eat and drink for 4 days, and they continuously dance for 4 days. And then at the end of the 4th day, they offer flesh to the earth. So they put things through their skin and tie themselves to a tree, and until their skin gives, they fall off. And then at the end of that, they're given this pipe, which is like the ceremonial piece of completion. And then so he hands that around before we got started.
Yeah.
And so you honor that. And then there's like drumming, and then he chants as you go in to the sweat lodge.
Yeah.
And then the process is like 4 doors. So the flap comes up, and they bring in, I think it's 7 stones, and then they close the flap, and it's just pitch black.
Yeah.
And then they just put the water over the stones, and then that just obviously, like it does in a sauna, and then the heat is real. And the first door, I think after it probably goes to, I think, about 4 or 5 songs, like chanting songs, and it's loud drumming and chanting, and you're in there, and it's hot, and you're on the person next to you.
Yeah.
And for the first door, you're like, I've got an hour and a half of this. And you realize at that point that you cannot get out, especially where I was. Like, I was across from like the shaman, and then the fire was like right underneath me, and there was people like jam packed all around me, right? So I'm like, if I freak out and want to get out of this thing, I can't. So overcoming that part for me was the first challenge. It's like, I'm not getting out. How do I feel about that? And then sitting in that. And that was the first challenge I had to overcome before there was heat or anything else. It's like, all right. So then I put that to the side. That's just done. That's not coming back in. Moving on from that. And then the first door was okay. And then they open it again, and then they put another 7 stones in. And this time it gets probably twice as hot. I'm starting to feel like my eyebrows burn, like, and things just coming off me. And then I'm like, okay, we're not even halfway, and every single part of me wants to just get out of this place.
Yeah.
How do I feel about that? Can I deal with that? And I need to sit in that. and I need to push that to the side. And there's different things you can do. Like there's like some people meditate, but I found it, the easiest part of it was when he was chanting in language. I think it's Native American, Navajo language. And I don't know what he was saying, but then I just started like chanting with him.
Yeah.
Like just making noise just to quieten the head noise just a little bit. And then again, it got to that same point on the second door where, what are you going to do? No, there's nothing you can do. How do you feel about that? Push it to the side. And then that was kind of the whole process I went through with every single door was the same thing. To got to the point where I was that hot and overwhelmed. I was just ready for it to take me. Like it's like I'm done. Okay, it doesn't matter. I could have done 2-3 more doors because it got to the point where I'd passed the point of really caring anymore. And I think that's when you get broken, and that's what they say, the letting go of. And I realised, like, other than the physical benefits from it, like just detoxifying and the clarity and all those things, anyone that does that, I think you really need to lean in to the psychological challenges that they are, because I've found that ever since I've come out of it, I question everything now that I do in relation to, why do I think I can only achieve this? Why do I think that what's holding me back from going further in whatever it is that I'm doing? Because, I didn't think I could get through this. But when you get through that and you sort of, you blow the door off the parameters of what you've given yourself or the stories that you tell yourself, well, then you question everything. And I found that's what I've been doing over the last week. It's like, well, why can't I? Which has been a real benefit. Really enjoyed it. Loved it. They do them every month. So we're going to get up there, guys. And because I'm sure I've sold it to you now.
I don't know.
We're going to get up there. You're coming, man. You're in it. You'll love it.
You'll look over at
that
me somewhere in the
I'll stay outside just to
you'll
make
see
sure
me in
you
the
guys
side
are
lodges.
okay.
You'll hear someone say, excuse me. I need a drink of water. Can you guys just let me out, please?
Yeah. No, you'll be fine. How was PNG?
Oh, it wasn't that intense as your sweat lodge. No, it was a great trip. We flew over there and played in a really packed stadium. You've been there before. Just, I don't think any of the players understood how big rugby league is to them. Just kids chasing the bus and chasing gear and yelling out and just wanting to be close to the players. And the reality is that we're a Queensland Cup side. We're not even an NRL side, but they still knew all the players. They had signs up with the players' names, which was just outstanding. And then, look, we didn't play too well in the first half. And as you'd know, once the crowd gets involved over there, the PNG players really started to grow. And by the back end of the game, it was close, and they ended up scoring the winning try about 3-4 minutes into the game, so towards the back end of the game. So it was one of those ones, like, there's so many things you have to think about. Like, I remember addressing the team before the game, and one of the things I said to them was, boys, I've been told from the officials here that once the game is over, get around and chat to the people and sign some autographs and that. Do not throw anything into the crowd. Like, don't throw boots, don't throw jerseys or socks or whatever, because, they'll just jump on it. It'll end up with someone's getting hurt. So that's why I end up saying the players. But those are things you don't usually say to your team, but it was more about making sure everyone in the crowd is safe. But it's a funny one. Losing a game, you're always disappointed. But I felt like when you leave there that you realize there's more to. Yeah. It's hard to be disappointed about losing a game of football, right? When you're on your way to the game and you see some of the poverty that people are living in, and you see just kids walking around with no shoes and stuff like that. And that you're going to the stadium and you're there to entertain them and maybe take their minds off their life for 80 minutes. And I thought we really turned up and put in a good performance, and they would have loved it, and they would have left pretty happy. And like I said, I'm a competitive person, but I was quite happy that they left happy.
And how was it in and around, not so much on the game day, but basically in and around the time that you spent there in the hotel, getting out into the community. Did you do any of that?
No, not really. So we pretty much landed late in the afternoon the day before, did recovery, had dinner, and then it's pretty much, you can't really leave your hotel. You need security and all that. It's a big mission. So pretty much going out to the game was our only adventure outside the gates.
Yeah.
It's a weird one.
Strange, isn't it?
It's a strange thing.
It is. It's a unique
driving,
experience.
You're driving in a bus, and as I said, you're driving along and you're just seeing all this poverty, and you pull up to these gates with armed guards and big, tall fences, and they open it up, and then you pull into a 5-star hotel.
Yeah. The contrast is...
And you look to your left, and
insane.
there's the restaurant there, and there's obviously tourists, but then there's, the wealthy Papua New Guineans in there, and you've just driven past, 10 meters away is a kid there begging for a T-shirt. Yeah. So it's a really hard thing to sort of see that contrast. And, one thing was, left the game, leaving the game, coming out of the sheds and getting ready to jump on the bus. And there was a few guys out there sort of asking for some kit. And, the boys were really good. They gave away a couple pairs of boots and stuff like that. But I was still sort of going over the game in my head. I mean, we only just lost the game, and a guy come up to me and he said, "Hey man, do you have any gear for me, like any shirt or anything I can have?" And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, brother, I got nothing." So we're loading all the gear onto the bus, and then he turns to me, he says, "Oh, do you think I could come back to your hotel and have something to eat?" And then I just sort of said, I just knew that couldn't happen. We had a bus and we had security guards, and I said to him, I'm sorry, brother, I don't think we can take you, man. And he said, difficult. He said that's all right. Yeah. And then he walked away, and for me, I just lost the game of footy, but sort of put it in perspective. And then I think on the way from the ground, sort of back to the hotel, I was like in a bit of a strange place, like looking around, like seeing all what's happening out there. Yeah, it's just it's a
reality
different
check.
Different world. Reality check. Lost the game of footy.
Yeah.
So it was, I think for a lot of our players, they come from families that they didn't probably holiday and stuff. So a few guys had to get passports in the first place. They go overseas as Papua New Guinea. So
real eye opener,
massive eye opener. So it was good trip. I think we did our job over there, and then now it's on to the next one.
Yeah. It was a I know we're kind of polycodal. We like to talk about different sports. A little bit of rugby, but I think it would be un-Australian if we didn't talk about the Matildas given their performance last night. Firstly, I know you were calling. Did you see much of it?
Well, I saw the back end mainly, sort of last 10 minutes, and then the shootout. We were calling the game on Triple M, and Andy Raymond was actually calling. He was calling the footy and the shootout at the same time, so he was jumping between them and keeping us updated. And at times, I was really just watching the Matildas and wasn't paying much attention to the Roosters Dolphins.
Huh? Understandably, it was just one of those situations where, like, I was in Cairns and we were with some corporate partners at Triple M, and there was a lot of people there that aren't really invested in sport. Don't know about rugby league or AFL or whatever it is, and were just there because, of their connection with their business. And so it was interesting sitting with some of those guys. Now, I think a lot of people are invested in the journey of the Matildas because of, the last couple of wins that they've had. But, had last night been 2-0 to Australia and we move on to the next round, I think, it would have caught, obviously, the imagination of the nation. But the way that they won last night, I saw some people get invested in sport like they've never been before.
Yeah.
Like jumping off the couch, like the penalty shootout format at World Cup level.
Yeah.
Is there more pressure? Is there, honestly, I mean, is there, I just don't know if I've seen another event. I think the last time I went to a game where I was as invested as that in a contest was the Aloisi. I was actually at Stadium Australia when Aloisi put Australia through to, what was that?
Yeah, the World Cup 2005.
That was a penalty shootout as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there, and I remember walking away from that going, like, and that was in 05 or something, was it?
Yeah.
And that was when like the Socceroos weren't even really a big deal back then. You know, they were just sort of, you know, that other sport.
Yeah.
And I just went away and said, that's the best sporting experience that I've ever had. And I think last night, obviously not being there, but witnessing that was something special.
Yeah, I think it's the shootout sort of catches everyone's imagination because it's raw pressure and emotion on like these two individuals, and just watching the despair when they miss it, and then how much, you know, they can pump their team up. And, you know, always the part of me that struggles with it is when it's coming down to the wire, you know, and it's on one girl, right? So someone else has missed one, two people have missed earlier, but it's really coming down to this girl, and it's all on her.
Yep.
And just her feeling the weight of expectations. And I think that's what really gets everyone on the end of their seat. But as I said, I was calling the game, but my wife was texting me from home and just saying how much my 5-year-old daughter was invested in it. Yeah. Right. And she was sitting there. She sent me a picture. She's sitting on the couch with a blanket, and she's like riding the wave of the Matildas. Yeah, she's never watched sport. And then she stayed up later than she should have. But the first thing, she come in this morning into the room and said, "Dad, the Matildas won." Yeah. You know what I mean? Right, so it's funny how a sporting event like that can really captivate a young audience. And then, my wife was saying to me, you know, when I was growing up, there was never like a women's team that I felt like that I could look up to. And I suppose that's how things are changing, isn't it? With the NRLW, with the Matildas, and we're seeing a real avenue for female,
especially with
sports stars.
You know, you look in the audience, and you know it's the amount of young boys and men in that audience. You know, just going for the Matildas.
Yeah,
it's just so it's so great to see.
Yeah,
because it feels like that they're always in that battle, but they have moments where they just they come out and they shine, and it's just. They're providing a really good spectacle. Like, they're playing really well. And I think that's what's making it as well. Because sometimes, any sport can be a little bit hard to take. Yeah. But, they're definitely putting on a great show. And I think they move on to face England on Wednesday. Now, the other thing, and it'll be interesting to get your perspective from a coach, like you've got the Sam Kerr situation.
Yeah.
Are you on top of that?
Yeah, the calf injury. And they've sort of been working her back in terms of her minutes, is that right?
I think she got. Yeah,
she came on around the 55th minute last night.
Yeah.
So, but she hasn't played much time throughout the tournament with a calf injury.
We all know what calf injuries are like.
Yeah,
it's the
spike
and load. Yeah, spike and load, that would be the dangerous part for it.
Yeah, but I guess they've got a real decision to make, because they've had a lot of success with the girls that have been doing the job while she's been away. Like some of the form players, I think is it Rasso and down that left forward, down that left side, and then you've got this creative young talent in Fowler, and those three have just been working really well up front.
Yeah,
and then Sam comes on, and there's about 30 minutes to go, and then they go into extra time. But you could arguably say that they're more aligned with the three that have been doing the job for them so far. So then you got to make a decision. One of the best players in the world, obviously, is going to be available. Probably for the semi-final, the first semi-final Australia have been in any sort of footballing World Cup. As a coach, what do you do? Do you pick the superstar that's been out injured, that's played a small role in getting you guys to where you are, or do you go with the guys that have been doing the job the whole tournament?
Obviously, take into consideration maybe from a physical point of view what you think she can handle. As a coach, I'm going with the best players.
Yeah.
I'm going with that. And no doubt that those other girls have done a great job in holding the fort, but I think as you get up to the higher games, higher pressure, it's all about moments, and I think you've got to have her on the field. And there's no doubt then that maybe one of them reverts back to the interchange, and if her calf doesn't come through, you make that change and you keep going. But I think from my experience and what I've seen previously is you need your best players on the field. And I think there's a reason why she's a top liner. Yeah. But that's a big call, right, for the coach.
It is. But I agree. It's about the moments. And you're going to come up against better opposition. I think the English, what are they ranked? They're ranked above us probably. And I think they're now sort of pretty much favourites to take out the tournament. And it's also about presence, right? Like you want to have her in the sheds. You want her, pulling her socks up next to those young
100%.
guys. It's going to be the biggest stage. Where is it in Sydney?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
So 80,000 people. I mean, it's a big event.
There was a lot of emotion post game, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Which is always
Is that a concern?
sometimes, yeah. Because you're in a quarter final, and I understand it was dramatic and it captivated the nation, and there was a lot of tears and emotion, but that saying job's not done, right?
No, that's
so
right.
it's now got to get yourself back up. Some teams are pretty good at that. Some teams are pretty good at jumping up to the high and then coming back down and preparing again. But in sport, we've seen over time where teams have gone up and played their final too early.
Yeah.
And that's always a worry, especially when you see the emotion from
Tony Gustafsson.
the
Apologies.
coach.
Yeah.
Because the coach is sometimes he's the measure of the emotion and the feeling in the team. So if you're a player and you're looking and you're seeing your coach,
Who's tears.
in tears, and it's all maybe
Gone off a little early.
is he gone off a little bit early? Where's your
Yeah.
Can you imagine if, let's just say, a Wayne Bennett or Craig Bellamy was coaching that side?
Yeah.
I don't think you would have seen that type.
No.
It would have been a pretty serious, let's move on. And I think that sometimes only time will tell when we see what their emotional state's like in the semi-final.
So I guess some of the other big news through the week, Benny, has been the signing of Big Tino, David Fifita as well. But let's just start with Tino. Titans, I think it's $12 million over 10 years. Big investment. Do you think it's a good one?
Look, a tight forward, paying that sort of money in a long-term deal, I think it's always going to come get you in the back end.
Oh, yeah?
I think always, I think, once you've had a couple of knees and a couple of ankle surgeries and some shoulders, I think sometimes a tight forward's never the same as they get over that age of 30.
Yeah.
If you were asking me, would I invest that money in a fullback or a half,
Yeah.
or potentially a hooker, I'd say yes. But I think it was necessary for the Titans to do this. I think it was very necessary to pull the trigger on it. Because
10 years, though?
well, if they didn't give him 10 years, then someone else might have given him 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reality is they've put themselves in this position through when they re-signed him the last time, putting in a clause that he could get out if the coach left them open to him leaving, and then left them open to want to renegotiate. So he had them by the balls. Well, what else are they going to do? They got a new coach coming up. They had a lot of instability, and he's a real star. Like, there's not much star power in the NRL, like guys like Tino and Reece Walsh, good-looking guys, very good footy players, very marketable.
Yeah.
And they could not afford. Could you imagine
No,
if he left?
him.
They couldn't have lost him. So I think what you do right is they had to do it. They pulled the trigger on it. If it hurts them in the last 3 years,
They need to deal with that.
just deal with it.
Yeah, it won't be Dez's problem anyway.
Yeah, it won't be.
He's 23 now, so it'd be 24 from the first year of the contract. So that takes him through to 34.
It's interesting that you talk about, when I think about Tino, I think about physical presence.
Yeah.
And if I'm looking at all the sides that have, all the teams that have had success over the last few years, they really have that physical presence.
Yep.
And they're the guys that hold the standards. And I'm not just talking about for the 80 minutes on a weekend. And any of those sides that have had success, generally they say that they train as hard as they play, right? And that gives them that the edge, let's say. The intensity of how they go about their business on a daily basis separates. And you can see that those probably top 3 or 4 sides and the rest.
Yeah.
For having Tino as that guy in your side, I can only imagine the standards that he would keep, and what he would demand off the people around him, not through his words, but just through his actions at training.
Yeah.
I know Penrith, I remember talking to some of the guys when James Fisher-Harris was coming through the system, and he was hurting people all the time at training to the point where they could only let him train with a certain amount of people because he was just that guy that everyone avoided midweek.
Yeah.
Now, he's brought that attitude, and you see how he plays every week, but that's how he trains every week as well.
Yeah.
That's his attitude. I remember when I first came into a Australian side, I was doing a warm-up drill with Shane Webke.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember just sort of half-hearted warming up, going up with a pad, and Webke just whacked me and put me on the deck and said, "Dude, you got to do better than that." And I went, "Right, okay." So that's how the Broncos train.
Yeah.
And they were the most successful franchise back in those days.
Yeah.
So I went away thinking, well, we don't have one of those at our club.
Yeah.
Like, you need one of those in your club to be successful. Now, I get it that at the back end of his contract, is he going to be physically able to do those things all week and then do it on the weekend? That might change.
Yep.
But I reckon for the next 5 or 6 years, I think it's a fantastic investment for the Titans because of what he's going to bring every day, and then, more so even what he does for those 80 minutes every weekend.
Yeah, and the other important part too is his link to a lot of other good players. And you don't want people to look at the Titans like, oh, Tino just left. Because if Tino leaves, Dave leaves. They're kind of a package deal. Tino was one of the reasons to help get Dave there. So by keeping those two, you're hoping then they can attract some more. You just don't want to have that look of a club like people are trying to get out of there. And I think that was really important for the Titans and the ownership to lock them in. And it sets up a good foundation, I think, for them. I still think they need to really find those halves that are coming through.
Yep.
I think they've got a good hooker there in Sam Verrills, but they definitely need to find a half.
Yep.
We love Kieran Foran, but how long can he go on for? They've got 2 great fullbacks.
I think they need to move Brimson into 6 at some point and really focus on him being a 6 because they're a better side where Jaden Campbell plays.
Yeah, they are.
The thing that I don't really understand is the amount that they've had to pay Dave Fifita. Now, I think he's having a fantastic year. But I think, if you pay an edge back rower $1 million a season, edge back rowers for mine are still dependent on people around him. Whereas, with Tino, you just know he's going to go about his business every week, and his best and his worst aren't going to be too far apart. Yeah. But with Dave on that edge, if you didn't have like Foz is over there at the moment doing a great job getting him the football, but there's times when you've just got a 6 that doesn't have the same sort of prowess or experience as Kieran Foran to sort of help him look good. Yeah. And he's not a guy that goes, chasing the ball. And he seems to be doing that better this year. But when I look at, Kikau and those guys that were probably at the top echelon of back rowers in the comp 1 or 2 years ago, all on around 750, 850, I'm not sure how you can justify Dave Fifita on $1 million a year.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's probably comes back to that star power too. I think just clubs love having these big names and that bring crowds and bring attention to the club. And I agree with you. Dave's been paid really good money for a long time, and I don't think he's been that 80-minute consistent performer. He's had his glimpses where he's done some really good things. It all depends as a coach what you're looking for too. Yeah. What type of back rows you like. I'm someone who I'm a big fan of your Boyd Cordner style.
Oh yeah.
Back rower. Mm-hmm. Someone that is lean, fit, smart. Because I think the foreign defender has to usually be the smartest guy on the field in terms of his defense. You never want to have to interchange him, and you never have to want to worry about him not just getting through his work, right? And that's been one of Dave's things, hasn't it? At times he's not really got through his work. So that's my style of back row. Other people like more X-factor back row. Yeah. But I'm sure Des thought it was very important to lock them up. We heard the rumor that he came up. He flew up to have a meeting with both of them and explain his vision for the club. So while he was up there probably measuring the training field.
The other thing that we've seen through the week is Sammy Burgess. He's signed to coach, I think it's Warrington in the UK. Now, what is it, and you're probably going through that process at the moment, what is it that makes someone that was a really good player a really good coach, in your opinion?
Well, look, you don't know until you get into those positions, right? And I think one of the biggest things for me would be identifying talent and knowing who to pick. Once you pick them, is figuring out a style that's going to work for your team. So I think you've got to be able to adjust. You got to be able to relate to players pretty well these days. So having a good personality.
What's his personality like?
Sam's very good.
Yeah, I've heard he's good in the room.
Yeah, he's very good in the room. And
Yep.
people talk about different things from him being a leader and he can hold a room. He's a very strong voice. If he was in a room and he was to speak, it's a very strong voice, but he's still very early in his coaching career. This is a fast jump for him.
Do you think it's the right move?
I think it's the right move
Yep.
for him, right? If you had asked me about another coach, I'd be like, well, that's a pretty fast move.
Yeah.
But I got no doubt that Sam would walk into the first day at Warrington and address the team and own it.
Yep.
And he's not really someone that dips his toe in. I think he's very sure of himself in a good way.
Yep.
Pretty confident. And look, I think it's important for him to get over there and really gel with the players and get to know the youth system coming through. Warrington's a team that spends a lot of money, but they haven't had a lot of success. So he needs to figure out how to get that, because sometimes over here in the NRL we forget that there's that competition going on up there in the Super League, but there's a lot of pressure up there. When you're living in those towns, if you're living in Wigan or in St. Helens and Hull, like there's a real pressure cooker there. I know they can be quite small towns, but they're all about their footy and they want results. So you're not getting results and you're going shopping, going down the road to get some groceries. You'll hear about it.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think it's a good move from his partners from England too. She's pregnant, so maybe that all fits into it as well. And I think he just wants to get up the ranks as fast as possible.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right.
Can I ask, is that South Sydney background, that pressure cooker you're talking about, is that going to set him up like he's basically knows what that environment's like? Because those fans, like we can see it in the engagement on our socials, they're so passionate.
Yeah.
So when the good times are good, they're good. But when they're bad, I could imagine
they're bad.
They're pretty bad.
Well, Sam's lived in a pressure cooker, right, for a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it would faze him too much. This is the only part about the difference between being a player and a coach, right? When you're a player and you're under pressure and you need to perform, you can look within yourself and get it done. Like Sam could go out and get it done. He could rally his troops and he could talk to them about pretty much follow me. Like, I'll set the tone here, you follow me, and that's how you inspire a team. You're inspiring through your actions. But once you're a coach, you can't do that anymore. So you can't just tell them.
You need to find other ways.
You need to find other ways, and that's the art of coaching, right?
Yep.
And understanding your players. So that's what sometimes can be a frustrating part of a coach. If you were a former player, is you almost can't understand how can you not do this? Like, we've practiced it and that, but you just can't afford to get frustrated, and he'll learn.
Yeah. And do you think that the fact that he's gone over there means that he knows this is now going to be his profession? He's gone over there just to get some more experience before he comes back here being the end goal?
I think he knows that this is his profession. I know we're pretty good friends, and he did his work in the media after he finished footy while dabbling with a bit of coaching, and I think there was one that was fulfilling him. One was fulfilling him and one wasn't.
Okay.
And we both work on the media, and it can be great at times and sometimes not so much. So I think for him, he really found that coaching sort of ticked that box, and he knows he wants to go for it. And that, like I said, when he makes his mind up, he's going for it.
Yeah.
So he's going there 2 years, and no doubt he wants to come back to the NRL.
So, guys, we asked the community this week what their medicine was, and we had some pretty amazing responses. So I'll just run through a few of these. So Ben Wright on the Facebook group, he said waking up as early as possible in the morning really sets up his day, and walking. On the Instagram, Nadine suggested some float tank therapy. Nanette.
Float tank?
Yeah.
Any float tanking?
No, I've never done it.
I haven't float tanked.
That's the next stage at City
We're
Cave
going to do
there,
that. We're going to do some of these things that the community you're talking about, so we can come back and tell them
that's
about our
like
experience.
new age stuff.
Float tanking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm up for that.
Nanette talking about ice baths and polar plunges, which
Yep.
I know you're into there, Girds.
Yep.
And James and Thomas were talking about some plant medicines as well, so including ayahuasca and psilocybin. So there's some different things, different
What are
types
you
of
looking at me
medicines.
for?
I can't really speak to that.
By no means am I an expert in any of this, Benny. I'm just still on my journey. But there's probably, I've seen a real shift, like a paradigm shift away from, just that physical presence of being, and people just, wondering if there's anything else out there, essentially, and exploring the consciousness. And I think that's what sort of plant medicines do. They allow you to sort of find an altered state of consciousness. They remove the conscious mind and all the dialogue, and they allow you to expand into sort of, whether it be like other realms, other dimensions, and you can have experiences that can essentially change your life. It's actually, there's a lot of people out there at the moment doing the work, right? Like physically out there doing weights and making themselves feel good, but they're not actually doing the work internally. And I reckon that's where the hard work is.
Really?
Because we've all gone through some sort of trauma or life situations that we probably we've suppressed. And I think a lot of these plant medicines done, and let me stress, in the right environments, guys, like with, people that really understand the medicine, that do it around ceremony, that have experience in like pre-ceremony discussions, going into it with clear intentions, and then integration is really important, because these things can really open you up. And if you get open and you've got no support, because they're kind of pretty new to, Western sort of society, they've been around for thousands of years in other cultures, then you can actually feel a little bit isolated and exposed. So they can be kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
But there's people out there now that are just questioning everything that they've thought about and they've been programmed for, and the stories that are told and the parameters that have actually been put around them in their life. And they're like, well, what do we use? 6% of our brains?
Yeah.
So, and why is that not reality? When they go into these different dimensions and the things that get opened up, or the entities that they see on these journeys, why is that not real? Why? Because a lot of people, just say, oh, it's drugs playing with your mind. But is it? Then there's people now that are really inquisitive around those side of things, with psilocybin journeys and with ayahuasca ceremony. But as I said before, the ceremony part is the key. Doing it with people that you trust, that understand the medicine, is crucial, and have the right infrastructure around, before you go into ceremony and when you come out of ceremony. So yeah, ayahuasca is a beautiful tool. It's deep work, you need to. It's confronting, and you always get from it what you need, but it needs to be used in the right way.
And we also had a footy question from James Matthews. So he sets it up a little bit. So, hi boys, regarding the current issue associated with head knocks, do you think an amendment in the interchange rule could possibly reduce the number of heavy collisions? Over the summer, I watched a lot of footy from the late 80s and 90s. The first thing you notice is less hits, more tackles. The interchange rule back then was once you're off, you're off. I believe you could only have an extended bench, but could only make for replacements. There's also a lot more intuitive ball movement in the games, defensive line breaks through down through the attrition. If you were to go back to these rules, the players would have to be a little lighter. Combine the skill and fitness level of the modern player with these conditions, you would have an exciting product and possibly less serious head knocks. A lot of experienced commentators often say that as a spectacle, the game was at its best in the early 90s.
Amen.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I got a bit to say on this. I think it's a great suggestion. When I played rugby union, I felt like we had too many interchange, but I did love the idea of once you're on, like as in once you come on as a substitute and the other guy goes off, that's it. You're off for the game. We got to be careful of how we play around sometimes with the game in terms of speeding it up, because I know when we made the 6 again rule, all right, it sped up things so much, and there was a lot of injuries. There was a real spike in injuries, a lot of ACLs. If you remember Luke Carey, he was just running down the field and done his, and I think that was it was a stress load increase. Then they changed it, tinkered with it, and they've got it right now. I think we've got a really good product. But I agree that, let's just say I'm Nathan Cleary, right? And I'm playing the game and I'm a smaller body and I've got these big guys running at me trying to tire me out. So I'm tackling them the first 5, 10, 12 minutes, right? Then after 20 minutes, the big guy, he's out of gas, he goes off, and then they bring on another big guy to run at me again. I don't think that's fair, right? My theory on it is, yes, you want to do weights and you want to be big and run at me, no worries, but in 25 minutes when you're tired, you stay here and I'm going to bring the ball back to you and you're going to have to make some decisions. And I think that's where the beauty of the game used to be, is what I'm saying. You could have an enforcer, but at some stage he then became a liability in your team. And I think that could really improve the style of game and maybe, take a lot of those collisions out of the game. You remember when you played when you were young, right?
Yep.
And where there wasn't a lot of interchange, you sort of picked your starting team and the game would start real fast and physical, right? And it would go to a level and then it would just stop. And then all together, everyone would almost get a little bit fatigued together and the game would get into a groove and probably the contact came down collectively. Now, when you're just bringing fresh people off the bench, that's where you get that the different levels. So one guy's absolutely fatigued, heart rate through the roof, and then you've got a fresh guy coming off the bench. Now, when they collide, right, there's two different levels happening there, that's when someone's getting hurt. So that's why I say you should have a starting side, and if you want to interchange them, right, you can do it, but you can't bring them back on. So as a coach, you'd save those interchanges for HIA, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, but the problem with fatigue and the argument against that is the fact that, fatigue then it causes people to lose their technique. One, that would be the thing that they would say, because at the moment, like when you got a guy that's under fatigue, like you spoke about, like that big guy that's been going crazy for 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden you have a big guy sort of run at him, his technique's probably not what it was at the start of the game, even though the collision's not the same. And wouldn't you have to change parts of the game, like the catching and the wrestling and all those elements? Like, wouldn't the league maybe look at something like that as opposed to changing the interchange, where they sell the confrontation of the impact? They love that part of the game, right? It's a better product with that. So would there not be other ways to get some of the head knocks out with going back and maybe changing some of the techniques or around, catching and wrestling and things like that? Or is the game too far gone now?
I think the game's too far gone now. I think if you were to really honestly wanted to take wrestling out of the game, one of the only ways I think you could do it would be to almost ban the third man from coming around the legs.
Yeah.
Right? So if you ban the third man from coming into the legs, right, that means me and you, Girds, we've got to hit a guy together, two of us. Now, if one of us doesn't go low, his momentum's going to take us backwards. And I think then we'd have to see, if it was only me and you that could tackle him, one of us has got to dip lower. Yeah. We've got to finish that tackle right then and there. And that's where you would almost get the wrestle out of the game.
Yep.
But this is the other part too, right? Back in the 90s, you had a front rower or a back rower. They weren't as big and muscly and strong as they are now, right? But there were still big impacts. And they still sold the game off impacts. I still remember seeing your web keys and that and your taluses. Doesn't matter if the bodies are 5 kilos heavier or whatever. I still think there's going to be impact. But I do enjoy seeing a game tactically as everyone go balls out and then hit the wall together, and then it comes into the game. And that's when our entertainers come in.
Yeah. That also comes back to, conditioning as well, and clubs, and they get rewarded for things like that, right? Yeah. Like then the whole club can be rewarded for, the work that they're doing midweek on weekends. Whereas now, sure, there's fitter sides than others, but because of the interchange rule, it just sort of, it levels the playing field, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is that where, that's where the NRL's kind of tinkered with it, right? Changing that interchange number in the last couple of decades.
It used to be unlimited. I remember
I remember
watching a game of Unlimited, and I remember the kickoff, and Shane Webke come flying 100 miles an hour, took a hit up, took a second hit up, next set, took 2 hit-ups, and then I saw them walking up the sideline with a drink bottle.
Yeah.
They just took them off, and they were on.
Yeah, we had some
off.
trials and that where it was like that. It was ridiculous. You didn't know who was on and who was off. Yeah, it was really disruptive. So
And then
I
they
don't
went
think
12.
They had 12. Yeah.
And then they went 10.
Yeah.
And now we got 8.
Yeah.
So,
But and you know what? You see a lot of clubs now that actually don't even use the 8 sometimes, right?
yeah.
It was funny. I was watching South Sydney play yesterday because we were at Cairns and I was sitting on just behind the bench, and a guy like Cam Murray and Jai Arrow, they must have spent 25, 30 minutes on the bench yesterday. I was sitting there thinking, why are they're guys that they get better as the contest goes on. Yep.
Well, Brisbane Broncos only make one interchange in the first half sometimes.
Yeah.
They got guys that can go,
Haas, Carrigan,
and Flegler, they play big minutes.
Yeah.